Okay, so this threw me for a loop. I was instantly drawn to this topic. It was about so the title that I saw was "Is it time to move away from Agile?" And it's interesting because the person who created the article was elaborating on a study. So let me give you a little bit of background, tell you what's going on. So there was a study that was put out by Engprax, Engprax, that said that it was in June of 2024, and it says that there's a 268% higher failure rate for agile software projects. And it says study finds, quote unquote. So it says a study consisting of 600, so very small sampling body, UK and US software engineers finds projects adopting the Agile Manifesto practices are 268% more likely to fail. Okay, let's talk about what this means, what I see, and how this could have been easily misinterpreted or for me it feels like stirring a pot. And I'm coming at this with a completely open mind and with a more agnostic approach. So let me tell you what I've got. Let me tell you what I see. So in the article, it alludes a lot to the principles in the Agile Manifesto. So let's start with this. The Agile Manifesto, for those who don't know, was published in February of 2001. So in February 2001, a group of 17 individuals got together and published a document to help try to bring the Agile world together, to help bring some unity. And what's interesting is the people who complain the most about the document are the same people who scream for unity in just about every other sector. So for me, to see someone produce an alarming report based on the 2001 document with a sampling size of 600, it doesn't necessarily renew hope or make me feel like this is, a credible study, if you will. And it's not because, once again, I'm AgileDad or I'm an Agilist. It's just because the things they're pointing out were getting very nitpicky. So some of the things it talks about is, so here's an example. It says research demonstrates that Agile software project failure rates can be cut 6.5% by using something called impact engineering methodology. It also happens that this impact engineering methodology is invented by this company, and they're trying to promote a product or service. So one of the things that my mama taught me a long time ago is that you can manipulate numbers to make them appear in favor of or against certain things if you're trying to make something else appear more credible. So it's interesting to me that the company who is going to be heavily beneficial by doing away with Agile or saying Agile's bad is the company that sponsored the study, executed the study, and revealed results that lean heavily in their favor. If I want to do a study that says the sky is green, and I hired a green coalition to help me discuss that the sky is green, and we sampled the shades of the sky, and I pointed out that there is a 2% margin of the sky that has some green tinge to it, therefore the sky is green. And I sold glasses that help correct, to help you see things, more clearly. Then yeah, it makes sense that I'm trying to. It just feels like dirty pool. It's the easiest way for me to explain it. But I think that after reading the studies, so I took the time, I did the work. I went and I read the studies, and it talked about 81% of the business decision makers in the UK and 89% in the US were concerned about on-time delivery. Of course they are. I think everyone is, right? And it went on to talk about how these individual developers felt like all these problems happened, and where they saw the pitfalls. And what they did is they boiled everything down to the group of individuals who were doing the work, which on the surface sounds like the right thing to do. Because if the individuals doing the work say something's not working, then we need to correct it. However, here we go. What I discovered is that everything that was described as part of the failure was a symptom of a bigger problem. The bigger problem that was being overlooked here is that people were trying to fix the interactions of the people instead of organizing and editing and fixing the work in such a way that it was easily consumable and better for all parties involved. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there were a whole bunch of people trying to change the way people behave instead of a whole bunch of people trying to align the work to make it something that's easy for everybody to consume. And if you're always trying to fixate on adjusting people's mental game, people's mentality, I mean, while fundamentally at the surface, we need to create an environment of psychological safety and an environment of trust, it's also our responsibility to create a working environment where the work is easily consumable. And if your focus is all on process and your focus is, going back to the manifesto, let's go there first. It says individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So we should be focused on individuals and we should be focused on interactions, but not to the point where we are so fixated on individuals. It's like swinging the pendulum in the complete opposite direction. When you become too fixated on individuals and don't worry at all about how you're handling work, the people are going to have problems because they're not in a perfect working environment. And when you go to create the container, you're going to recognize that the problem is lack of trust or lack of ability to complete the work because the work hasn't been sufficiently prepared. Then the question becomes, do we revert back to waterfall to make sure we have a whole lot of upfront preparation? Or do we lean in on agile practices to help prepare to work ahead of time so that we have a good intake mechanism? This reminds me, and it carries the smell of when we were talking about the difference between a definition of ready and a definition of done, and the intake mechanisms for work going into an agile process. It also directly reflects a heavy reliance on a product owner role that is omnipotent and that is very much self-aware without getting consult from people who are in touch with the consumer or the strategic initiatives of the business. So what I'm saying is this study, in fact, how about this? Based on the principles of the things that they bring up, they are 100% correct. They're sitting here saying, hey, Agile has 268% higher failure rates. It does if you're not doing other things that are necessary in order for you to implement Agile. It just feels like to me they took one small swath of Agile, one small cross section, and they said, if this piece fails, then Agile fails. And I don't think people look at Agile holistically. So here is my final synopsis. My final synopsis of this report, of this study, is pretty simple. When you look at Agile and you only focus on Agile delivery, which is where this thing is rooted, then yes, if you're only doing Agile delivery, you are going to see high failure rate. And the reason why is because, well, you're not doing all the other things that are necessary. So you're asking yourself, what are the other things? Well, there should be a part prior to Agile delivery that talks about initiation or ideation, validating your ideas, making sure they're good ideas, following through, following up with people, saying, hey, let's do a quick brainstorming session. It doesn't have to be expensive, but something that pulls people through an ideation phase just to validate the idea is good before we start working on it. Then there needs to be discovery. And people are like, wait a minute, you're leaning in more towards waterfall. I'm not. This doesn't have to be long-winded, but discovery is necessary to make sure we've identified the target persona correctly, or personas, that we understand a workflow, that we've done some form of risk management if something happens, that we've done some type of mapping, whether it's empathy mapping or journey mapping, story mapping, all of those different things that are going to help us understand the flow of how someone is going to engage with our product or service. Then and only then, when we have a pure understanding of what we're trying to do, is it okay for us to really start brainstorming the backlog and pulling together the things that are going to be done initially in order for the team to execute in the delivery phase. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you fixate and only look at delivery, then sure. I mean, I'll go as far as to say that 90+% of projects, if they're not super small or super easy to do, are going to fail in that delivery phase if you don't do the right things up front. And the last piece, the final piece, is I think that if you skip discovery altogether, then what's going to happen is when it comes time to release, you're going to be focused on output and not outcome. So it's important for you to fixate your focus or change your focus so that you're focused on the impact that a product or service has and not necessarily just the output that you're creating. So what I'm saying is this report focuses on output. It only takes into consideration delivery and doesn't take anything else into consideration, and then declares that Agile fails because delivery fails. That's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, learn more at AgileDad.com. We'd love to hear from you. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care. Bye now.